Welcome to this January meeting of Ways and Means. Let's stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, everyone. Okay, I will try to be as smooth at this as possible, but give me a couple years and we'll see how I do. Okay. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
We needed to add the Technology Services Director report, item 7A, and then the Workers' Comp ASU renewal under item 8, Human Resources Director.
Any discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? All right, seeing none. We are now at limited public comment. And it's very limited. Seeing no motion back there, we will move on to item number 5, delinquent tax borrowing.
So with the delinquent tax fund each year, we have done a resolution for borrowing to pay the locals back. As we know, we have a fund balance that is sufficient enough to fund rather than borrow for those taxes. Doing this by still continuing the resolution in the event we needed any of those funds for anything related to general fund. We thought borrowing and having the availability would give the treasurer flexibility and the board flexibility. So this is just to do what we normally do. Last year we passed it, but we did not borrow, so this would be the same thing we were doing last year.
Everybody understand that? Okay, well, then do we have a motion to approve? Okay, moved and supported. Any discussion? All right, seeing no hands. If you want to pass this, say aye. If not? Aye. Okay, thank you. That wasn't me, that was you guys. All right, any opposition to the resolution? All right, it has passed. And this is, of course, a stopgap. This is not a guarantee we're ever going to use this. So, and let's hope we don't have to. All right, moving on to remonumentation.
Tim, did you want to come up?
Good morning, Tim.
Good morning. Talked with Ron Lester. We're going to continue the contract at the same rate and use the same surveyors that we did last year at the same rate as well. So that's a continuation of the project as we did last year. Is there any questions?
Commissioner Holmes.
I was aware of when these remonumentations, when it's redone and somebody like a farmer comes through clearing fence row and takes it out, who's then replaces that again? How does that work?
If somebody takes it out, well, they're making sure those boundaries in the right spot, so they're gonna put that post in back where it should have been in the first place. And things happen, weather related and different things. Sometimes areas become swampy or something like that. But the project is almost done, the initial phase of the project at this point. So most of the problems have been worked out as far as the problem corners.
But my question would be, when a farmer takes a bulldozer through there and just disregards that, then who's going to come back and do that? Do they just ignore that again?
No, the remonumentation person that goes out there is going to put a new marker in there and replace it. So they'll take care of it.
So I'm aware of one that hasn't happened over some time now. So 9292 Tucker Road, Hamlin Township.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
Have to take a look at it.
Right.
Any other questions for Tim? Tim, as a projection, how far are we from completing remonumentation?
I would say within the next year or two, it
Oh.
should be complete as far as the first phase.
First
And then the-
phase.
And then the next phase will be looking at rechecking all the, like he's talking about, some of the areas that have, where a post marker's been removed that needs to be replaced, and also GPSing, which helps our GIS department tremendously as far as getting those GPS points.
So in theory, this is a never-ending process that we have here.
That's correct.
Okay. All righty. Oh, Jeannie?
Tim, so if there's a post in there and it does get removed, but GIS can find it, that it needs attention?
No, the remonumentation surveyor are gonna recheck that all those posts are in there where they should be, so it's their job.
I'm gonna go physically out there and look.
Yeah, they're gonna recheck all those points, make sure it's there. And my understanding is once remonumentation is done, it does make it, for the taxpayers, a lot cheaper for a survey because it gives them that mark to measure off of, basically.
Any other questions, Tim? Yes, Commissioner Mott.
Yeah, Tim, I think it'd be helpful, because we have some new members, if you just kind of do a brief history and what remonumentation is, because I know when I first started, I had no idea.
Yeah, I understand. Basically, there's 36 sections in a township. And so each section corner is checked to make sure it's in the right spot. And then they measure off that as far as like when you look at your legal description on your property at home. Every property has a legal description, describes, you know, how many feet it is from those corners. And that's a very valuable reference point, especially when you get out in the country. It's a little bit different than like a platted subdivision where everything is platted by surveys. So essentially those corners, so you have like 4 corners on a section, basically, and all those of course, they share, you know, from the other section, those corners, to make sure those are in the right spots. And so that measurement is important and also used for our mapping and GPSing as far as our GIS goes as well.
Any other questions for Tim?
And this has been going on for, when did this project actually start?
Project started, I believe, in around 1981, so we've been doing it for quite a long time.
Yeah.
It's good to be thorough.
So you have 2 resolutions to pass for that. One is to approve the contract continuing with Ron Lester as the representative, and the second is to approve the agreements with the surveyors.
Do we do it separate?
You can do both, or you can do them separate.
I make a motion that we approve both of the resolutions to extend services to Mr. Lester for remonumentation.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? And these resolutions are for 1 year each, correct?
That's correct.
All right, all right. All right, all those in favor of moving this resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, they have passed together. Anything else you need to tell us, Tim?
Oh, that's it.
All right, well, thank you, sir. Okay, now, we are going to move to our Technology Services Director, because we've combined IT with Ways and Means. So, good morning, Eric.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to new commissioners and returning commissioners. My name is Eric Daly, Director of Technology Services. Wanted to bring attention to you today that we recently applied for a state and local cybersecurity grant. This grant is administered through the state of Michigan. The state of Michigan applies to federal funds that are allocated from FEMA and Department of Homeland Security. This is a 4-year grant endeavor that the federal government has put together. We're in year 3. These grants we're applying for are for year 3 of a 4-year grant. The grants, as far as broken down into categories of what we're able to apply for, and for their federal fiscal year 2023. That's what's open right now. It's basically broken down into advanced backup solutions, cybersecurity assessments, cybersecurity awareness training, cybersecurity professional training for IT and security staff, endpoint detection and response, managed service providers, the cost for professional services to integrate something, you can apply for those, a migration to a .gov domain, and the last one is multi-factor authentication. It's basically a secondary security factor for signing into multiple applications of your choosing. Kind of time constraints and staffing resources, we chose to apply for 2 of those sectors. The first one being advanced backup solutions. This is intended to replace some aging infrastructure that's currently leveraged by our prosecuting attorney's office and sheriff's department operations. The current equipment is kind of an air gapped and intended for, sensitive information that's not part of our, overall enterprise network. And the second piece that we chose to apply for was cybersecurity training. Currently, Eaton County, we manage a cybersecurity training curriculum. We've been doing this for a number of years. We had a slight gap for some funding constraints a few years ago where we chose not to do that. The last 2 years, we've re-engaged that. We're currently using a company called KnowBe4. And so what I applied for there is basically funds to extend that or fund that for another 5 years. So that way we can ensure that we keep that program operational for another 5 years. Based on what I know today, the state of Michigan is offering to cover all matching costs for any one of these grants. So theoretically, as it stands right now, don't hold me to this, but there shouldn't be any matching dollars required for local Eaton County funds if these grant applications are awarded. As far as the timeline of this grant and approval through the state of Michigan, according to their website this morning, the application and scoring review that's handled by the state of Michigan, that's going to occur the month of January of 2025. Formal notifications, if successful applicants are awarded, will occur in February, and then grant agreements will be sent out to applications in the month of March. Any questions about the grant applications?
I'd just like to note one thing. This was a really quick turnaround, so normally what we would do is to take a resolution to the board to apply and then to accept the grant award. In this case, I think I had received the information and Eric had to get on it right away, and he does a phenomenal job with that, so I appreciate all of that work. But he's already submitted the application, so what I'd like to do is if we are awarded the funds, then the board would accept the funds before we could do anything with them. So if I just wanted to make sure that you understand that we're not authorizing him because I already did it because it was too good of a deal to miss out on.
Mr. Haskell.
Thanks for the update, Eric. No, we've accepted this grant in the past, right?
It's never been submitted through from Technology Services, so I'm not sure if another department has applied for the grant in the first 2 years.
I don't believe so.
Okay. For some reason, I thought this was the same grant that paid for the cybersecurity training that was in Novi. Was that a different
through-
grant, or was that just
That
us
was through a
funding it?
different grant through
Okay.
emergency management.
Homeland Security funding.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Thank you.
So was the KnowBe4 program, was that run through a different grant outside of Eric's and then applied to us?
No, so before we were doing training, and I guess you could talk to this, but we were doing training before we didn't have funding. We needed to bring it back because there are so many cyber threats that we hear about all the time, and we want to ensure that our employees know, don't click on this. It has now been a great exercise, and Eric can talk to that because we've actually had some good tests where they send a test actually, and somebody might click on it and then they get oh, you did a poor job. I'd like you to know that I got one and I was successful and didn't cause a problem.
Thank you.
I know. So I don't know if you want to talk a little more about that, Eric, sorry.
We were paying for it before. Now the opportunity's up to get it paid for in a grant, right?
Yes,
For future expenses.
In the future, okay.
yes.
I haven't done all my modulars, but I'm doing pretty good.
And it is one of the things that our insurance company, I mean, they look to us to do that, to ensure that we're keeping ourselves safe and their fund and our funds safe for self-insurance. So it is important that we do it.
So for last fiscal year, was actually able to work, submit a grant to MMRMA, and they did a 50% match to fund our past year's cybersecurity trainings through KnowBe4. So like Connie was saying, you know, our insurance provider greatly values these training and the curriculum, so we want to continue that going forward. And it's not to say I can't submit. What's that?
It is pretty tricky when you go to those modulars and they teach you that stuff. I send the information to other dumb people too.
Thank you for spreading the word.
Any other questions or comments?
The only other thing I don't know if you want to mention, when Eric has listened to meetings in the past and we talked about remonumentation, he had an interest in being involved. So I don't know if you want to talk about GIS in relationship to that.
Sure. So remonumentation, like Mr. Vandermark stated, kind of goes back to the mid to early 80s. You know, during the acquisition of these section corners that Tim talked about, technology has changed drastically with that too. Where, you know, back in the early 80s, technology was definitely more primitive than it is now. Precision has changed, it's greatly increased. So kind of going back in time, you know, 25 years ago here at Eaton County when our GIS or geospatial program kicked off, that was one of it's kind of the foundational building blocks of how we build all of our digital maps for county operations and for the public to use. When remonumentation is implemented here, some of those detailed digital values weren't provided and still aren't provided to our team here. So what we're forced to do, so we can kind of progress our GIS program here over the last 20 years, we're actually going out with survey grade GPS equipment and capturing those coordinate values. So in phase 2 of what the remonumentation committee is proposing, they start providing those, you know, value-added digital pieces to their reports. And that's what we're really advocating for here internally, is that we have a seat at the table or a voice that we can ensure that dollars that are put into this remonumentation for phase 2, that we get that value-added data that we need, so we're not creating redundant work and duplication of efforts. So kind of piggybacking what Tim was talking about too, I'd be more than happy to provide some documentation to explain kind of the public land survey system, remonumentation program, what section corners are, the section corners, the quarter corners, the interior corners. I'm almost certain I have a document that we can provide you now that it kind of does a better job of explaining of what those monuments are and how they're used. So I'd be happy to do that at a next meeting or, you know, before the next meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah. I did have a couple other things if you want.
Sorry.
Okay. Any other questions, I guess, about the grant? I don't want to skip over that. Okay. I wanted to give you a status update on a couple other projects that we're working on. The Delta Township substation, we've completed our network equipment. All that equipment was paid for by Delta Township. We're just administering and installing it there. Network equipment is completed. Security cameras have been installed, configured. We have a meeting with the vendor in 2 weeks to finalize fine-tuning and scope of view of those cameras. The smart homes, smart offices, they've been contracted with the township to provide all the technology for their conference rooms. They are actually on site today, working on installing things there. Secure door access, the vendor has been there. We've worked with Chad and Facilities Management to configure and test that equipment. That is in place now. Furniture is slated to be installed the week of February 20th. Once furniture is installed, then we go back through our team, the Eaton County IT team, and do cable management, set up, you know, migrate equipment from their existing temporary substation to the new substation. And then hopefully, if everything goes in as planned, they will be in that new building the first week of February. Any questions about our involvement with that project? Another project that we're working on, we're actually scheduled to start another audit, an IT audit with the front of the court through the Office of Child Support. That audit focuses on IT security assessments, vulnerability scans, and updating our plan of action and milestone. These are audits that we're required to do since Eaton County manages IT services for the front of the court. We have to go through these audits every 3 years. So the audit itself is just, the scope of work is just for functions of the front of the court and the prosecuting attorney's office. We take it as an opportunity to assess the entire network, to look at our security postures with our entire network. So does it create a tremendous amount of extra work for our department and team? Absolutely. But it's important that we do that so that we're not focusing on a narrow scope of our network, but we're capitalizing on the wide reach of our network. So those audits, the last one we went through took us literally 2.5 years to complete. So it's essentially these audits have just kind of become a rolling part of our, curriculum and practice here within our team. So it's another, part of our security posture and measures that we use, but the audit itself, and as well as external, scanning and penetration testing for cybersecurity threats, that's all paid for by the state of Michigan, so we're able to leverage that. Any questions about that audit?
I guess you're doing a really good job of explaining things, Eric.
I guess. The first week in February, Circuit Court is scheduled to move to WebTCS. That's basically, it's internal change within the state of Michigan of how the trial court system acts, how they're going to access their files there. So we've been working with our trial court administrator, Amy Etzel, scheduling meetings with state staff there, putting timelines together, training staff, working with our document management solution here internally to be able to link to that new site at the state. In coordination with that, this week we also tested our disaster recovery protocol.
Just want to hear you twice.
Yeah, that's good. But we worked with Amy on that and staff at the state of Michigan to ensure that our disaster protocols are in place and connectivity is there. So in the event that staff cannot connect here at the building, we have equipment that we can connect anywhere that essentially there's cellular service. They can plug in and do a very narrow scope of work to be able to connect and access the state records and still continue court operations in that capacity. Any questions about that?
Commissioner Barnes.
What was the name of that program again?
The WebTCS. WebTCS. Yep. And then the last thing I have is we're working on MCT replacements for local police agencies. It's part of a continuing project that we have here. It's budgeted. It's actually funded through the 911 millage. So all the equipment that's in our local police cars, computers, modems that connect back here, those are all slated to be replaced in our maintenance schedule. So we've received that equipment now and are scheduling to get those replaced now. Nathan Nybert, our deputy director here, does a phenomenal job with that. He's managing that. And yeah, that's what I have. Actually, if Nathan wants to come up and introduce himself to the new members here.
Commissioner Haskell, you have a question for Nate?
Good morning, I'm Nathan.
Go ahead and introduce yourself. I'll get the question out after.
I'm the Deputy Director of Technology. The Public Safety Project has kind of been my baby. Treat them all equally, but it's fun to kind of do this project every couple of years. It's a lot of work, though.
Okay, well, that makes my question a little less important, I guess. But so when you're going through and replacing these modems and communications equipment and the vehicles, you have some that are new, some that are old. Any risk of the two vehicles not talking to each other, or any complications having old and new in the mix while you're going through the project?
So we actually do them all at the exact same time.
Oh, really?
That way, every car you see from like Charlotte Police Department, the technology supplied by the millage is identical.
Okay.
So they're all the exact same age, exact same model, everything is identical.
Okay, that makes sense. Because I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I'm like, wow, a rolling project here, that's a lot of different versions of things out there, but
Yeah,
that
from
makes
an
sense.
officer deputy standpoint, we want to make sure that anytime they get in a car, they're 100% familiar with it.
Sure.
And they can just, you know, God forbid there's any kind of call, just go.
Right. All right. Well, thank you.
Question for Commissioner Mott.
You don't just service the county cars, right?
Nope, we service all law enforcement cars in the county. The millage does not pay for hardware in state police car. They take care of that side of things, but we take care of all of the cities in the county.
I just wanted other members to be aware of that.
Commissioner Wright.
Nathan, originally, when we passed that millage, it was because, like, certain fire departments had to carry 3 different items to be able to talk to different things. So now, everybody in the county that's under emergency services all gets the same thing.
Not quite the same thing. Fire trucks are supplied, typically it's their first out rig, they're supplied with an iPad. And then county cars and city patrol cars get actual full laptops. So it all talks back to the same system at dispatch, but there is technically 2 different systems.
Oh, okay,
One for
that,
fire EMS, one for law enforcement.
because I was on public safety back when we first started the idea of getting it through and stuff, and that was so that everybody could talk to everybody in an emergency. Okay, so they still can.
Yep, absolutely. They can always use radio, and then if they want to send, you know, things via computer, they have that option as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Nate? Nate, you and I have talked about this, but how many vehicles have we outfitted with our technology, with this technology?
So there's, hardware-wise, there's around 60 vehicles total. And then we have another 60 vehicles at MSP that have the software on them, that we support just the software side of things. And then there's, I want to say around 45 to 50 fire trucks that have it, and another probably 15 ambulances.
So well over 200 vehicles.
There's a lot of vehicles now. Plus, like, for instance, a fire chief, they are also allowed to have the software as well on their, like a personally supplied phone. So we probably have 250 devices out there at any one time that can sign on. Yeah, plus the stations are also supplied with a device as well. It's a big system.
And how often does the hardware need to be updated?
So it depends on which part of the system we're talking about. The computers typically is anywhere from 3 to 5 years. We usually do the fire departments the year after the computers. And then the desktops inside the stations, usually we're hoping to get 5 or 6 years out of those now. So it's a
The number that
continuous
got me
cycle.
was, what's the approximate cost, average cost for outfitting a vehicle?
Ooh, that I would have to find a number and get back to you.
Oh, you told me in your office.
Well, it's changing now, it's the problem.
Oh, okay.
The software side of things has not gone down.
It's not going down, that's,
Correct.
we expect that.
And then the modems control the integration to something like Axon as well. So if you open like a back door, you want to make sure cameras pop on automatically through a policy, all kinds of things like that. And each city PD uses a different system. So you have to kind of learn all of them, make sure everything works.
And lastly, and this is just trivia, like, but when we remove old equipment to replace with new, what happens to the old equipment?
Typically, it's recycled. Sometimes it's still just something we can push back out into like an office setting here. Not everybody loves the big, thick, rugged computers in their office, but I love it.
Okay, all right, well, thanks, Nathan. Any other questions for Nathan? All right, thank you, sir.
Commissioner Wright was talking about, because Kelly Cunningham is paying attention right now, were the radios. That was the radio project. So that was the question that she was asking. Yeah. So those were radios.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
2 separate millages, yep.
Yeah.
One supplies radios, one supplies.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Kelly. Director of Central Dispatch.
So the last thing I'd like to add is, especially the new commissioners and returning commissioners, our doors are always open. I encourage you to come see us. We can do a walkthrough of the facilities, the equipment, look at our operations. Love to have you, and love the opportunity to explain more of what we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Oh, one more question. Commissioner Moudry.
Am I sitting too low?
Apparently, yeah.
Eric, this may actually be a question for Chad, but what about our backup generator situation?
Well, I'm definitely gonna have Chad come up, but what backup, I guess, what sector, all backup generators?
I know things went down earlier this year, and we had to go switch to backup.
Sure.
And just wondered if that's a situation, or is that being relieved?
No, it's definitely something that's on the horizon and definitely part of a capital improvement plan that we have, but the courthouse facility here has very limited backup generator capacity. So basically for the facility here and the courthouse, we basically have emergency lights and basically power to power our data centers for computer equipment. However, if there's no power to run our desktop computers and monitors, that doesn't really help, but it does keep the integrity of the network and our phone system operational. But there is a deficiency in generator backup. Our 911 center, our youth facility, the sheriff's department, and health department facilities, they all have, I don't want to say adequate, but good good generator backups where they can continue most of their operations. It's really the courthouse facility here that could use a facelift. Now, Chad, if you want to add anything.
I started something.
Sorry, bud.
Actually, you summed it up pretty well. The biggest deficiency is here at the courthouse, and it's just small for what when this building was built in 1976, it was adequate. We haven't been able to upgrade that. It's a pretty significant cost for the project. We've been looking at it. It's in my capital improvement plan. We would love to have uninterrupted power to continue operations, but that's a $1 million+ project. So in order to, obviously, we need to secure those funds before we can move forward with anything like that. That's just the unfortunate reality we face right now.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All righty. Moving on to item number 8, Human Resources Director.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me today. So I'm going to do the positions update. I will say this will be longer than I normally do just because we have a lot of new commissioners. And so I just want to talk through things that those returning are probably going to glaze over because they've heard a lot over the last year. But I want, at least for that initial one, to run through just so everybody gets a sense of where we're at. So general overview, we filled 6 positions this month. We have 15 positions posted, with 5 of those being for ongoing requisitions with the sheriff's office and youth facility. So that just means that those are like pools where we constantly leave them open so that we have a pool of candidates we can pull from because of those needs. Positions updates, a monthly report we provide to keep members of Ways and Means up to date on employment changes that have occurred in the last month. For elected offices, their positions are authorized annually as part of the budget process and don't need monthly authorization to fill existing positions. They're represented in that darker blue or the lighter blue, showing you that it was an update in an elected office. Then for offices that are under the direct control of the board, we'll always come to this body with a request or recommendation to reauthorize a vacant position if a change occurred over the last month. So any request for new positions or reclassification of an existing position that occurs mid-year will always come to this body for approval as well. So that's kind of the framework of why the position updates is a part of this process. So you'll notice 2 categories where we track programs. One is the youth facility. We had an expansion that we were awarded by the state of Michigan that allowed to expand the facility. And at the time of that occurring, there was an authorization for additional staff to staff that. So we track that separately so you can see how our recruitment process is going with that. We entered into early bargaining with the youth facility and the sheriff's department, which is the other program that we track. So that's why they're listed separately, so that board members can kind of keep an eye on how our efforts are doing there. So the next would be just generally, I would just say with any organization, knowing that a loss of talent is not just an FTE missing on a report, that represent hours of staff time to post a position, evaluate resumes, review references, interview candidates, all of that. And then if you land a successful candidate, honestly, for most of our positions, you're looking to 6 months to a year to bring them on board and get them acclimated to the roles. So I just want you guys to keep that in mind when you look at these. And as you talk to constituents, you let them know that this is a significant investment that Eaton County makes in our personnel consistently as we try to keep our positions filled. So the pressure that's left when people leave, so high turnover does carry a cost, and it's high cost for the remaining staff to have to pick up the work to fill the gaps. So just kind of wanted to impart that at the front end of this. So trial courts, I'll give a quick update. It was a busy year for trial courts with a number of offices losing employees due to retirement, resignations, and other reasons, including, I think it was 3 judges we had appointed last year, right? So with that, judges, when they come in, they have a judicial assistant that reports directly to them. So there was a lot of shifting of positions as we had turnover in judges. That's not necessarily normal, but was unique for last year. So you have time spent managing staffing transitions and covering those gaps. That was a real struggle for our courts. The youth facility, as we discussed, we early bargained to try to get that agreement to a place where we had better retention and recruitment. But as you can see in the positions report, we still have a lot of progress to make on that. I will say Jeremy Mulvaney and his team do a great job managing that facility and delivering excellent care to our youth. But whatever ways we can support him, we're still actively trying. Prosecutors update, we have significant retention and recruitment problems with attorneys in Eaton County and with the prosecutor's office. I think as we always discuss public safety, it's important that encompasses the full life cycle of a reported crime. So it's not just the arrest, the jailing, but it includes the process the prosecutor goes through to evaluate a case and ensure defendants are treated fairly and that victims get their day in court. So prosecutor's office has had us to assemble law enforcement records and evaluate all cases. Attorneys have left to become judges, a parole board member, 3 to the AG's office, 2 to Livingston County, and these departures were made for positions with higher wages and lower caseload workload, right? So currently the structure of compensation here at the county is not meeting the retention and recruitment needs for the prosecutor's office. In a future meeting, the prosecutor was able to secure some one-time grant funding, so that will be a discussion in the future as he's contemplating how to try to use that to leverage to support his office. Should also be noted that when you see vacancies in the prosecutor's office, they can't simply hire an outside attorney to come in and supplement their team to work cases, which is a practice that can be done with the public defender's office. They're structured differently. So when you see those vacancies, just know those are hard losses in the prosecutor's office in terms of capacity that the team has to step up to fill. So we appreciate all the effort that's been going there. Sheriff's Department, we've got 1 vacancy in corrections, and we filled one last month, and we have 1 opening right now. We have a jail EMT vacancy. Originally, it was 2 a few months ago. We got somebody who was part-time to go full-time, but these are positions that are very hard to fill. So generally, if it's something that requires a license, a certificate, or something to that nature, those are tough to fill because all communities are struggling. So we're all competing against each other for the same dwindling pool of professionals. Road Patrol, there are 5 vacancies. There are currently 10 in field training, so these deputies aren't counted in our staffing numbers, but the differentiation is when they're in field training, they can't patrol alone. So when you think about from a coverage standpoint, those 10 don't alleviate the pressure needed for providing road patrol coverage. So while there's only 5 vacancies, with the 10, you should consider that as 15 spots down from a coverage standpoint because you have to have 2 per car for the ones that are in FTO. And then the number can be higher if you consider anyone that's leave on leave or has an assignment at the courthouse for security. So those are all factors. So the Sheriff's Office has done a terrific job managing what's been one of the worst staffing periods in Eaton County history for road patrol. Process of recruiting, training, and onboarding a candidate through the MCOL certification process and completing FTO takes about a year. So when you think about that process, just know people that we're putting in the academy today won't really be represented in our staffing numbers for another 10 to 12 months. We have 2 more that we are putting through the academy this month. Yeah, so while we've been working through that, there's background check, back history. They have to do background investigations. It's a thorough review. So, you know, you may have 15 people apply, only 7 make it through that process. And of those 7, maybe only 5 actually complete all the paperwork, even if they're eligible. So by the end of this, there's really a small pool of candidates that come out that qualify to practice law enforcement in the state of Michigan. Resource recovery, and parks, there will be probably something presented in the future. I know those 2 groups are working on strategic plans and plans with the MMP, so there may be something staff related, but those will go to the policy committees first and then get recommended to this body. But just to give you a heads up, they are working in coordination with the plans that they're structuring. So that is the positions update. If you count the 4th. Yeah.
I correct you.
Yeah.
Versus you correcting me.
So technically, there were 4 appointments for judges because Morton moved to circuit court. So thank you for the timely correction. I appreciate that. Classy. So the action requested would be Ways and Means Committee to make a motion authorizing the recommended position, which is an accountant in our office. That is the only recommendation we're making this month. You want to speak to that? Yeah.
Do you want to, we talked about whether it's a hiring freeze for any non-elected office, which would be my office, included in that. If you have questions for me related to the accountant job and refilling it, I can answer those, but I will tell you right now, that is it's a crucial position. It is the position that manages all of the grant accounting. And I can tell you right now, Melissa is not here today. She is in her office with the door closed working because we have the audit. We have several other items going on, and you're having me doing budget, I'm doing audit items, and I'm also working on grants. So it's something that I don't think that our office can do without, so that is why we're making the recommendation.
I make a motion that we hire a new accountant person for the controller's office.
Support.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Any discussion? Any further discussion? Okay, Commissioner Haskell?
I guess for those that might, be kind of on the fence with us, hopefully new commissioners had a chance to go through orientation as well. And if you had a chance to speak with Melissa during orientation, you would know that it's very well needed, and she would be, she's missing that extra support. So I think it's good to have.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? All righty, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, the motion is passed.
Ryan, I still have a question though.
Certainly.
Okay, so Ben, when I look down there to those 10 deputies and I go across there, I just need more of an explanation, please. And it says corrections deputy, but they really are road patrol, right? They're not in the jail.
Correct. So really, I have both of those listed, but as part of the attempt to address like severe understaffing, a corrections LOA was set up with the union where corrections deputies could get sponsored through the process to become a road patrol officer. So I just have both listed to signify some may have come through the corrections route, some may have been external hires that came right through.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I knew that there's a different term when we're talking positions. They're either road patrol or corrections, but.
Yeah, and we've tried to, like, if we have somebody going through the academy, like, to not count that against the jail in terms of a position piece, because the sheriff also has budgeted for cadets within his budget, which are like a non-union position while they're going through that pool. And that's why we did the letter of agreement with the union to create that capacity build if there were corrections officers who wanted to become road
Move
patrol
up.
deputies.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Any other questions? Ben, could you briefly go through our agreement with our cadets? And so that when they complete their training at our expense, what happens?
Yeah, so with our cadet program, we have set up where everybody who does it, we have them sign an agreement with us that if they don't complete, I think it's 12 months from the completion of field training. So we'll use the 10 as examples here. If they were not to complete field training, which is probably May of this year, then they would have to pay back. If they do complete it, they are required to stay with us for 12 months or have to pay back. Since we've been able to leverage State of Michigan grants through MCOLS, a large portion of the cost to send people to the academy and their wages, et cetera, are covered. So we've kind of, at this point, when we have had to recoup losses from people who haven't completed the program, we typically will subtract out State of Michigan money first and only go for what's left over, which I think has been a good approach, but yeah.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Ben on that? All righty. Moving on.
Okay, so next is a request from employee in the non-supervisory unit with the Sheriff's Department for a request of 5 years of service credit purchase. To give you an idea, this is a process that's allowed through MERS administrative rules. It's not currently like a bargained benefit, which is why it's ultimately, even if it was a bargain benefit, it always comes to this body for approval. So I do think the employees here, I didn't know if they wanted to speak or if you were open to having them speak.
Certainly we can, yes.
Yeah, it's up to you, no pressure. Just the option, yeah.
Heather Steffen, I'm currently a detective with the Sheriff's Department.
Do you want to go through it?
Yeah, I can go through it. So the Heather had requested MERS run a calculation of what it would cost. They came back with an evaluation of $189,000, essentially $190K. And at this point, administration is not recommending the purchase of service credit for a couple of reasons. One, we've talked about retention and recruitment efforts, and it's difficult to give somebody 5 years of service credit and they could leave 5 years earlier, right? The other thing is this is MERS independent evaluation. If their projections are wrong, all of that liability is owned by the county. So if we don't have a market perform based on their calculations over that 5-year period, we eat the risk. So for those reasons, administration's not recommending it, but we wanted to at least give the opportunity. Heather, if you wanted to speak too.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I accept that you're not recommending it, but I also want the board to know that I have reached out to legal counsel and with the union, and based on past practice and no one being denied this opportunity, they believe I have a good fight.
We also reached out to our legal counsel, and it is up to this board to decide at any time whether or not these are on a case-by-case basis. And I will say, based on the financial footing of the county, I don't think there's any reason to.
And we have denied requests in the past.
Can you tell me who you denied?
I would have to look. I think I know who it is, but I don't want to say without being sure.
Because I've reached out to everyone that I've heard of that has, and I've requested stuff from the county and did not receive any paperwork back. I was told we don't do this, and then the next thing I know, there's a Ways and Means Committee that I'm asked to be at, which I appreciate the opportunity. I don't, part of me, that it's not I think the county would actually save money. I'm one of the last people to have insurance, and I would be giving up my insurance in retirement. Plus, I'm at the higher end of the pay grade. Plus, this is a benefit that I was told we had.
It is a benefit that, it is something that's allowed under MERS. It has not been a practice that we've done. There were 2 groups, which were non-union groups, that we officially codified that we're not doing that with MERS. And that was done in 2020. The former controller at that time did not go through the rest of the updates to say that we weren't doing it again. And I will look again at the minutes going back to show that we have turned it down in the past. And we've done that because, one, we received a calculation from MERS at one point that was not accurate. And then we did our own calculation, sent it back to MERS, and MERS came back and said, you're correct, and they had to recalculate it. So again, going back to what Ben has said, we're taking on the risk, even though we're taking the money that the employee would be paying for those 5 years, we're taking on the risk of the market and the unknown. And as you've seen in the past, the valuation that we get every year, it doesn't matter what we're contributing, the county is not getting ahead on those contributions. But the other concern that we have, it goes to retention. So yes, this employee does have retirees' health right now. So what she was indicating, leaving, she would not have that benefit. She would not, charge that benefit to the county going forward. But at the same point, and I say this with all due respect, your years of service with the county have been phenomenal, right? So why would we want to lose you early?
But why would, I understand that.
I mean,
I get it. I
yeah.
appreciate your sentiment.
Retention.
But why should I be punished because I was a good employee?
Well, we're not punishing you for that,
Kinda you
but
are.
we're
You're
saying,
like, look, you can do this, but no, you're a good employee. So
the sheriff's office has been saying that we need to recruit and retain, and most importantly, he's saying that we need to retain. And we're losing people with 25 years of experience. And you heard a couple of months ago, we lost 75 years of experience in one, swoop. So we're losing people. Now, again, you can leave at any time, but the goal isn't for us to.
And let me say this. Yeah. I love my job. I love working for the sheriff's department. I love being a detective. I have no plans on leaving, but I have the opportunity to do this, and I want to do this. It gives me more options down the road. There's nothing that says that as soon as I hit my 25 years, I'm done. Because now with the way that the going from the 3-2 multiplier to the 2, if the more years I work, the more I'll make in my retirement, which is part of your retention, correct?
Part of the retention issue
And
that we're.
like looking at my retirement, right? If I add 5 years to my years of service, that would put me at 30, which would build up my whatever, because I'd be putting more in. There's nothing that says that I'm going to leave as soon as I hit that 20-year mark.
Yeah, I would just say, I wanted to invite you to speak, but I don't necessarily want this to devolve. If you have anything you'd like to say in closing, administration is making a recommendation, and it's based on what we've already stated. So we appreciate, is there any closing?
No, I have no closing.
Okay, all right, appreciate it, thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Any questions or comments? My concern is setting precedent, and I don't know what past practice has been. We talked about it briefly, but I don't think at this point, given our financial situation in the county, we want to take on any liability that could snowball. Any thoughts on that?
Should we make a motion on the table so that it can be
Yeah,
discussed?
we can put it.
Discussion.
Anybody want to move this? Okay, Commissioner Haskell moved. There's support? Oh, okay, Commissioner Wright support. All right, back to our question. Any comments, concerns?
Excuse me, I didn't hear if the motion was for,
Motion is to put it on the floor. I mean,
Okay.
bring it forth, so we haven't voted on it yet, so.
Yeah, so we can't discuss it unless it's under a motion.
Well, we can talk about it, but yeah, we can. discuss
I
it.
think the question was, though, was your motion to to vote yes on it or no? So I think if you're bringing it up to vote yes, then it would be a no vote. If you're saying no, then it would be a yes vote. Do you see, is that what you were talking about, Commissioner Barber? Yeah. Okay.
I've got some verbiage if you wanted to use it. Administration would be requesting the Ways and Means Committee to make a motion to not accept the request for purchase of service credit as requested by a member of the non-supervisory office.
Yes, that'd be my motion. Do you still support?
All right. All right, so we still have the discussion open on the floor. No thoughts, anyone?
I think it would be helpful for the members to maybe give an explanation, a little better explanation. Does everybody understand what's being said, what's being done? So I think it would be helpful if you could explain what's going on here.
Yeah, so when a purchase credit is allowed, if it's in the contract, it's already been bargained, and so it's like very specific about what that looks like. So this doesn't exist in the contract allowing this. MERS, as our plan administrator, has rules that they're able to develop, and they don't get input from us, right? Because they're their own independent organization. So MERS allows service credit unless there's a no on file from the employer. So for this group, there's not a no on file. It's like automatic no, they wouldn't even allow it. So our employee submitted requesting a calculation, requested us to ask for a calculation from MERS what it would cost to buy 5 years of service. The 5 years doesn't count towards vesting. So if this was an employee who'd been here only 5 years, was trying to purchase 5, they would not be immediately vested. But the 5 years can count towards early retirement. So an employee with 20 years of service who's bought 5 years, and that contract allows them to retire after 25 years of service, they could leave at year 20 because they bought their 5 years, and it's treated like a 25-year retirement in terms of benefits and distribution. So the request before us is from a 20-year employee to buy 5 years of service. And the reasons that we went through and talked about is just the concern. One, this is MERS calculation. We assume all the liability, and given our financial position, the responsible thing is not to assume additional pension liability. And then the other piece is the retention and recruitment issues we've had with the Sheriff's Department, taking an action that could hasten the departure of somebody with years of experience, and those are the pieces administration brought up as concerns. Does that give a broader context? Yeah.
Okay, any other questions, comments? All right, we'll proceed to a vote now. Before we do that, so voting yes would mean what?
Voting yes would be to not accept or the request made for the purchase of service credit as requested by members of the non-supervisory group.
Okay, and so a no vote obviously is the opposite of that. So any
A no
other
would be
questions?
voting for it. Yes, you're correct.
All right, seeing none, let's proceed to vote. How do you feel? All those in favor of not supporting this would be an aye vote? Okay,
Aye.
all right. Any opposition? Seeing none, all right. So that means that then is off the table.
Should we do a roll call? Because I don't know if I heard everybody's.
We had no
Oh, it
opposition.
was unanimous. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. All right, thank you. Moving on to item C under number 8, workers' compensation.
So this is renewal of our work compensation contract. It's a quote from Midwest, from ASU. So this is an updated quote for our ASU Group Risk Management Services. This is who manages our work comp benefit. Typically, we've done 1-year renewals the last 2 years that I've been here. This is for a 3-year. It'd be locking in the same rate as last year for the next 3. We were able to do this by having discussions about what our package covered. Previously, we included some loss services from ASU, and there was like an administrative fee plus built in if claims exceeded a certain threshold. So by agreeing to remove the loss control services allowed under the previous contract, ASU was able to give us a price lock for 3 years. That loss control would have been asked, like inviting them to come in and give us recommendations for reducing claims, and it was a service we honestly had not used. So our thought is if we can, fine tune this contract, lock in a 3-year rate, that's a good move for the county. So our recommendation would be Ways and Means Committee make a motion authorizing the Controller's Office to sign and execute the renewal agreement as presented.
So this doesn't change anything that we've been operating under, correct, Ben?
Yep.
Okay. Because I'm not an attorney and there was a lot of pages there to read. So I just want to make sure.
Yeah, literally the only changes, because once they sent us the renewal, we went through them line by line, is just on the additional services that they throw in there. And so they're trying to restructure their contracts down to offer less of those additional services. They will still offer that loss service. We would just have to pay on a per hour basis. But again, because it's something we haven't utilized. In terms of the core coverage, this still maintains everything that we have to have through the state of Michigan in terms of providing work comp coverage to our employees.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Commissioner Woodry.
I have to ask the comptroller, the administrator, are we pleased with the service we're getting from them?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments? I'll ask one, and if, again, briefly for our new commissioners, could you give us just a very brief overview of what risk management really means?
Yeah, so within Eaton County, we have about 418 employees, and that can vary depending on seasonal coverage. So what this risk management is, you're attempting to manage the liability of having staff. Somebody slips and falls, somebody hits their knee or gets injured on the job. As an employer, there's a claim that comes associated with that, and so even if an employee goes out on permanent disability, there's an attachment of liability that exists with the employer. So ASU is our first line of defense for work-related injuries in terms of managing that benefit. So if someone's hurt at work and they need medical treatment, it runs through their services and their program. So when the employee shows up at the hospital and says this is a work comp, the hospital staff know that that should be getting billed to our carrier and not to their Blue Cross Blue Shield coverage. So this is, in context, is our first step to make sure we're abiding by the law and protecting our employees and trying to minimize disruption of care, so that when they show up, nobody's asking, how is this getting paid? It's just try to get as quick treatment as possible. And sometimes you'll run into one-off situations where somebody's not providing the right form, and our office will work with individual employees to make sure we try to minimize that, but it does happen. It's healthcare in America, so we do try to manage those individual situations.
So it's absolutely necessary to have this in place.
Yeah.
And if you have ever run a business and you don't have it in place, it's not a good day.
You're going to pay no matter what.
Yep, absolutely. Okay. So this is an action item. So do we have a motion?
I make a motion to accept the contract for
Support.
Okay, motion and support. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none. How do you vote? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, thank you. All right. That covers item 8.
I did have one thing I did want you to know. The personnel policy traditionally comes out at this time to be updated. Our office is currently gathering feedback from elected and department heads. Plus, for those that read, there were about 98 bills that were tucked into the House that passed in December, and I think is still, so we're still evaluating the legislative effect on our personnel policy. So hopefully within the next, probably either next month or the month after, our goal is to get a turnaround on that because we do need to update that policy because there have been revisions to state law that we're accounting for. So wanted to give that last update.
All right. Thank you, Ben. All right, moving on to item number 9, Finance Director.
And that's on me. So I will give an update on the audit corrective action plan, but for new members, last year for our audit, we had what are considered findings. So the auditor said that there were a few things that went on, and I can talk individually. You can watch past meetings, but I'm not going to have to go into it long, so we're not here till 11. But those findings basically are saying not that our financials were incorrect or anything was wrong, but a process was not followed, or a journal entry may not have been posted timely, like they found it, but it does not mean that anything was off in relationship to our books. So with that, we've been bringing every month a corrective action plan and what we've been doing. So again, being short-staffed anyway, and now even worse, with the accountant that handles all of the grants, which is related to federal awards. So there's a whole section in the audit report that's federal awards. It's called the Single Audit, or CFA, and it's a lot of reporting. Now, I know Melissa's completed that, and Melissa is going right now through all of the reports that we have to provide to the audit team that will come in. They will begin officially working next week on reviewing everything that has been submitted. They right now are doing it. So Melissa has sent our financials, general ledger. She'll send another update to them today by noon, and they'll begin working on that. One of the things that we did have an issue with last year was in relationship to some transactions within the drain office, as far as general ledger entries or invoices that were not posted correctly. So we've been working with a firm and it's an accounting firm that has been reviewing the drain assessment rolls, what are called our assessment receivables, and the drain capital. These are huge. Right now, the drain commissioner's office is down positions. There is an accountant posted, but their deputy director is no longer there. That individual worked on special assessments, so we do not have that contact. So basically, our finance director has been going in and doing all of that work to look at the drain financing, the drain capital, and the drain transactions. I went through some of them. There's a lot. You know that we've had a lot of drain activity, so it has been an awful lot of a heavy lift for our office. The other part was in relationship to the treasurer's office, and Treasurer Raynette is here. I want to say that his office, Treasurer Raynette, has been excellent. He's met with Melissa. He met with Ben. I was busy on one of the days that we were meeting. He and I see each other in the hall, though. But he has done a really good job of making his staff available. And we found one thing with that through the land bank, that the funds that came in for the projects that were done in Sunfield were actually federal funds. So had Melissa not had the meeting with the individual who does the foreclosure and land bank work, we would not have known that. It would not have been reported on our CFA, which would be a violation related to the auditing procedures both at the state and federal level. So kudos to both Melissa and Amy Ide who did that work, and for Treasurer Raynette and all of the work that he has done, as well as he did appoint a chief deputy. Dawn Paul, she has done a wonderful job working with Melissa as well, and going through tax assessment or the tax revenue and collections. First time that that has been done by an individual in the office now. That is also a very heavy lift for reconciling taxes. So Melissa and Dawn worked on that hand in hand, and we turned that over to the accounting firm. They are also looking at that and reviewing it for presentation for the audit. So it's an awful lot of work. Melissa has done a great job, but a heavy, heavy lift. And now, whereas the accountant that was in the office would be fielding all of the emails from auditors, and then getting anything that went to any individual together and giving it to them, that's all going to Melissa, and I'm carbon copied on it. Oh, I just said carbon copied, CC'd on it. Logan will correct me on that later because I sound silly, right? But anyway, so it's right now it's an awful lot of work for our office, and I just want y'all to know that we're going into budget time, and your expectation is for the finance director to work on the budget. The finance director is not going to be working on the budget, that's going to be me. So it's not something that you want your administrator to do, but again, this is history. We have talked to Chair Drosha about this. We had previously with Commissioner Mulder when he was here, and we have talked extensively about all of this with Chairman Mott. So I just want you to know where we are financial-wise with the audit. And then I'll also note our court administrator is here. She and I have the lovely experience of having a report to the state related to trial court funding. So again, that would be something your finance director or your accountant would be doing. So I'm working on that, and the trial court administrator, Amy Etzel, is working on it, and it is a lot. For Amy Etzel's part, there's a lot of reporting. She's on caseload reporting that she also has to do. It's a huge expectation from the state. It is something that we do not receive any funding to have someone come in and look at the data that we have and pull it for us. We're doing all of the work. They gave us a month to do this, and that included the 2 weeks that were holiday. So it was difficult to get information. So we're working on it. It involves every job description, listing every position, going through building plans. So Chad has been working on that, facilities manager. And we're Amy and I are both smiling through it, right? It's a lot. I have to list every single employee and the cost if they were not here for the whole year, what percent were they here? And what this is going to do is have the state review it. We have to have it in by next Friday. They will review it and give a report on how funding should be done through the state for the trial courts. And as you know, we're the funding unit for the trial courts. They're a separate employer, so they're looking at how they're going to fund. So I would say similar to what we dealt with indigent defense, they came up with a plan on how to fund that. County had to contribute an amount. We had to provide space, et cetera. Same thing could happen here. And this is all the result of the fact that courts are no longer allowed to collect costs the way that they used to, which some courts would maybe overextend costs. That was not something that was done here, but there was a lawsuit years ago. It was Cunningham versus the state of Michigan, in which that individual was charged costs that were over and above what they could explain. So if you had a cost that was $1,000, they may have charged $5,000. So it resulted in a lawsuit, which resulted in many other people being involved in that. So that's where we're at right now. It's a lot of work. We will receive something back from the state, they say now in October of 2025, and we'll see what happens with funding. So that's something else to think about for the budget, upcoming budget. We won't have that information and availability of a change on that until 25, 26, 26, 27. Okay, enough on that. Health insurance report, Logan, if you can go to that. We only have reporting through November. We have not received, oh, thank you, Ben. We have not received the December reports. Usually those come, they're a month behind. But as you can see from the report, that the estimated fund balance now, looking at we're looking at a new year. I wish I was scrolling, Logan. We are looking at potentially being in a negative fund balance. We ended in a positive fund balance because we used some of the ARP funding. But we are still looking through self-insurance and what we had budgeted to ensure that we don't have to contribute additional money. But it's too early to tell because we're 3 months into the fiscal year. But this picture is telling you what 11 months of costs are. So you can see the amount of cost for the facility, the professional services, prescription drugs, stop-loss coverage, and so on. So does anyone have questions on that? I know we have new members. This can be complicated, but we'll continue to go through that and learn more. Yes.
Commissioner Haskell.
I've never looked at one of these before. What should my eyes be drawn to right away as like a good or bad report on one of these?
So go to the page before that, Logan, I'm sorry. So when we look at, I wish I need that mouse. I do. I'm really sorry. All right. So in terms of the budget, okay, what you would look at is estimated fund balance. Again, like I said, we're only 2 months into the fiscal year. So the fiscal year right now is reporting we ended up with a fund balance in September of 143. That fund balance went down as projected to 54,000, and that it is now at 110 negative, in the negative. So that's what you really need to be concerned about. We used to just report on claims activity, but when Melissa became the finance director, she wanted you to have a look at what's going on with our funding because we're self-insured. The other thing that we want to ensure that we look at is the total amount of expenses. So where you see the revenue total, right, I can't move the mouse right here, that is the amount of money that the county and employees have put in, which is $7 million, and again, this is calendar year, $7,016,240. The total expenses are 7.4. So you see that the expenses are outpacing. We are still dealing with the effects of COVID. It's going to happen because a lot of people delayed services. They just have. You know, you put off having knee surgery. You put off things here and there. I mean, we hear it from employees, and they're all having these procedures or surgeries done now. So we're still going to be dealing with that. I don't know if that'll settle out. The other thing that we dealt with last year is that Blue Cross had under-calculated or estimated what claims would be. And they did this pretty much throughout the state and nationally. It was unfortunate, but again, I think it's due to COVID and not understanding. So we did have a large increase in costs when we adopted our budget. But that hopefully will not be the same thing that we deal with next year because we had a 16% increase.
I think
18? 18% increase that came about. I've talked to other administrators, city managers who had the same experience. It's just the way that it happened this year, and it's our healthcare system nationally. So,
Could it have to do with our lack of filling positions for paying into the fund too?
yes, excellent. That was excellent. That is totally what happened, but I will tell you the way that we ensured that we did not go into a negative balance was one through the ARPA funds, but what we did is we looked at all open positions and we pulled out of the budgets that we could because some of them are grant funded, so we can't take money out of there for reporting. But anything that was general fund or a vacancy in a fund that we can touch, we use that funding because we were anticipating needing that funding for, those employees. So again, those employees may not have received services, but they received services up until they left. And then when we filled the position, services again started up. So that's a great question, and it made a difference in how we budgeted this year.
Any other questions or comments?
There's a lot of charts in there to look at. We try to give a little bit more of a picture for you. So any questions on those charts, anytime, let Melissa or let me know. I think, Ben, you can even handle that, right?
Probably.
Yeah.
Except don't call Melissa today.
I'm trying to keep Melissa here right now. I'm trying to get her not to say, sorry. The next is public improvement. I'm done talking.
Well, maybe not.
I'll try it.
Well, Chad, welcome back.
Good morning. A lot of new faces here. Welcome the new commissioners and the new members of this committee. I'll do a quick introduction. My name is Chad Powers. I'm the facilities director here at the complex. My team handles the building maintenance, custodial services, as well as grounds maintenance. We also have the building infrastructure maintenance of the parks system. So, and as Eric said, my door is always open. My office is just down the hall across from the men's restroom. If anybody has any questions, want to meet or see how we do things, or kind of behind the curtain look at some of the facilities, feel free to stop by or contact me at any time. Also, part of our role is with buildings infrastructure. We're assessing and doing capital improvement plans. Some of the bigger expenditures, as I mentioned earlier, the generator was one of them, but we have several about the complex here. We have 14 buildings, so as you can imagine, I think that we assess that the average age of the buildings are 36 years old. So with that becomes a lot of preventive maintenance, which is leads to my next, because of our funding and budget constraints, a lot of those items get put on or get deferred, so we're really limited at what we can do in the 25 budget season here. One of the projects that we'll be working on is an expansion of the evidence storage room in the sheriff's office in the lower level. They've outgrown their space, and it's an interior renovation to give them some more space over there. I'll be engaging design professionals to get that going. Included in that would be a dehumidification system for that lower level, just to keep things appropriately climate controlled. We're also rolling out a new work order system, which for our departments, they can a little more streamlined and more updated. Worked with Nathan and IT with that. There's no additional cost, but that way our team members in other departments can submit work orders in more efficient, streamlined fashion. As Eric mentioned earlier, we are working on the door access system for Delta substation. That is administered by my team through our central location, though the sheriff's office will do the grant access, whomever, the credentialing will be done by sheriffs, but the software piggybacks onto our existing system. We were out there, did a walkthrough, made sure everything was working properly, and that's slated to be open very soon. Also part of the existing or temporary substation that they're using, once they vacate that and their lease expires, they move into new space, we'll have a significant amount of office furniture and different things that we're hoping to repurpose for some of the offices here in the sheriff's office that are outdated. So we're looking at some cost savings there. It's just a matter of getting it over here and repurposing it. So, and then finally, I just wanted to touch on Nathan and Chairman DeRocha. You talked about over 200 cars that they put technology in. They currently don't have a facility for that. They do it kind of where they can in the parking lots. I know Nathan's done it at his house. We're hoping that at least some of that will be relieved with the new Delta substation. They can utilize some of the garage bays there, but that's going to be limited. And I know if Kelly, our 911 director, is listening, we've been in discussion of building a new facility here on the complex for that purposes. I think the 911 millage will pay for that or a portion of it. So with the economic climate the last couple of years, that hasn't been possible, but there'll be more on that. Just on days like today, they may be outside working on technology for our emergency vehicles, which seems a little outdated. So more to come on that, but I just want to bring that up. If there's any questions, I'll take them.
Questions? Commissioner Barnes.
Yeah, Chad, do you know when would be a good time to maybe get a tour of that facility, Delta Township substation? Like,
Yeah,
down the road when
yeah.
things are kind of set?
They're in the finishing stages right now. When I was out there last week, they were finishing up flooring. And I think they were shooting for the end of this week, early next week to start doing some of the final cleanup. And as Eric mentioned, some of his onboarding stuff there. So yeah, I think at any time we can schedule that. It's a really nice facility, much better than what they had. And
Past it, but thanks.
There is a ribbon cutting that is supposed to happen the end of the month. I think it was, Logan, do you remember, it was the 28th, maybe? They're looking at that, so there would be a ribbon cutting.
Commissioner Wright.
Helping with our electric bill and things with the solar arrays, now that we've had them up for a while.
So it is helping for sure, and they're doing what they're supposed to do. We've seen about a 30 to 35% drop in our consumer's energy bill over the course of the life of what we've had. Well, the thing that you have to also look at is the input cost of what it costs for us to put those up. So, and I know that Ben and Nathan have been assessing that to just kind of see what our net gain has been. I don't have that answer for you right now, but I can tell you on the surface, when I see the consumer bills, we're saving substantially on a monthly basis.
Is people using also the charging stations that we put in?
Yep. So we have 8 charging stations here on the complex now. I don't have that data. I know Nathan has been tracking that, but it has, since we implemented those, the use has steadily increased.
Are we on some kind of map that people like just driving around know to stop
I'm
here?
gonna defer to Nathan on that. He's the wizard on this. So, but
I know
yes, to
that
answer your
they
question.
started talking about that type of stuff, just on the regular news and whatever.
Yeah, so he'll expand on that, but we're definitely.
Yep, so we're actually on 2 different maps. So the particular charging company we use has their own map, which we are on, and we're also on the PlugShare map, which is kind of the general one that most folks are using. So yeah, we are absolutely on the map, and all the information's 100% correct as well.
Very good. Okay, we're moving along then to a new time.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Nathan, those are apps that you put in your location and it shows you all
Yep.
the local charging stations, so we are on those. Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Nathan or Chad?
All right, thank you.
All right, moving on to item number 11, budget amendments.
So in the budget amendments, we have a transfer into the general fund from the indigent defense grant. Something that we were not aware of, and we've been dealing with a lot of work within my office, legal counsel, that's costly. So Melissa contacted the state granting agency and was informed that we can charge administrative costs through our cost allocation plan. And with that, we are doing that. If we're allowed to do it, we are going to do it. We don't have to amend with the granting agency the grant document. We just are transferring money from savings and personnel to transfer out. That's the lower where it says indigent defense. We're moving it from personnel to transfers out, which is allowable under the grant. And then we will move it into the general fund. So the costs, and I think at Public Safety, you heard from Director Cunningham from Central Dispatch that we're able to do that with the 911 millage and with resource recovery. We're also able to do it with parks and any millage that we have. We can, construction code as well. Any of the costs to operate any service department, that's facilities, my office, technology, and the treasurer's office, we're able to draw those funds from any of those sources. It's to do the work of the operations. And we have not used that wholeheartedly throughout. Some grants don't allow it. Again, we were not aware we were able to do that. Disappointed that we were not aware we were able to do it. So we're going to take advantage of that, and we will do it moving forward. It's $120,000 into the general fund, and we believe that's important. The other one at Parks and Recreation, we had projects from last fiscal year, the interpretive center that is being expanded or remodeled. Say not totally expanded, and then the staircase that is being completed at Fitzgerald, interpretive centers at Lincoln Brick. Those projects were pending, they were budgeted last year, so these are what we call rollover funds into this year in order to complete those projects. Do you have questions on those amendments?
All right, seeing none. There's no action to be taken.
No, we do. We need a vote, or we need a motion and a,
Okay,
sorry.
okay.
I'll move to accept the budget amendments.
Okay, moved and supported. Any more discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposition? All right, that motion's passed. Moving on to item 12, miscellaneous.
There is no miscellaneous?
And moving forward to
Sorry.
item
Chair.
13, bills. Oh, Chairman Mott.
Thank you. So, Logan, during IT meetings, you would give a report on website and activity and stuff like that. I know I'm putting you on the spot, and I apologize, but I found those to be very informative, and if you don't mind, maybe just give an overview of what's been going on.
Hello, Commissioners. I think sometimes I will be reporting here, especially with action items and updates like the web analytics, or at the full board, so you'll have to deal with me no matter what. So for those who I haven't met, which I think I've met most of the new commissioners, I am a mighty department of one. The communications department, we play a role in facilitating critical information exchange between internal and external stakeholders, so the public as well as all the staff here. So whether that means in an emergency situation, getting the appropriate information out, or if a department has a service or a program they need promoted or put into the hands of the public. And then I also am in charge of, when it comes to the website, making that ease of accessibility happen, any updates to that, and which has been a huge part, and I work closely with the Technology Services Department to do that, which is what Chairman Mott was talking about. And so what that means is we look at benchmarking on other websites using Google Analytics or Clarity with Microsoft to sort of pull reports on who's accessing our website, who's utilizing it, when do they fall off, how long are they visiting any specific page or service, what are they doing and not finding, how often are they sitting on a search page to locate a service, whether that's with the courts or with any other department. And so we just overhauled our website as best as we could. We are in contract with Civic Plus, so that we were limited to what we could do. And also we don't have the resources to build our own website that we would then own. Maybe in the future that's something we could consider doing. But at this time, we are in contract with Civic Plus. And so we worked with them, myself and the Technology Services Department, to update the website as best we could, simplify accessibility, upgrade that search engine capability, as well, all the while looking at analytics with Google to see where are people falling off, what are they focusing on, and what does that mean? So often my reports will kind of cover any major changes that have occurred. We're working on ways to, using Clarity and benchmarking and heat mapping to see specifically how long and where they're hovering and clicking on our website. Some of that's a little strange to put in that code, and I need to actually work with Liz and Tech Services to figure out how to plug in that HTML code to better accurately heat map our website, which is something I've been wanting to do for months. And so now that I have this new service, which is free, that I'm sort of hoping to strong arm into our Civic Plus website, we should have more information there. But that's sort of what the back end of the website work is as well. LN Emergency Management and I have been in conversation about finding ways to upgrade ease of access web accessibility, especially when it comes to ADA compliance on our website, which is something we just don't do right now because it's costly. So we're looking at maybe grant funding to try and solidify that as well. Does that answer? I'm trying to remember what you asked me to. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Commissioner Barnes.
Yeah, I just want to commend Logan. Last couple of weeks, I've been looking over the website, and it's a huge improvement. Hopefully, for the new commissioners out there, when you go to your township meetings and villages, point people towards that website. There's great information there. I did notice, little thing, I did notice that Commissioner Jones had Brailer's picture still up. That was the other day, I think.
We caught that.
Okay, no
That was
problem.
actually not my fault. That was
No problem. I'm not trying to blame
That
anything.
was
I
our
just thought
website.
I'd throw that out there. But let me tell you, it looks great, and you're doing a great job. And like I said, there's a wealth of information there. So I commend you for that.
Thank you, and I would also give a huge shout out, as I do anytime I report to you guys, to Liz in Tech Services. She's fantastic, and I work in tandem with her on the website.
As well as the entire staff there.
And can I add to that too? When Logan came on, the county didn't have really a Facebook presence. Like I think we had just built it. It was non-existent. We had no following. The community didn't know Eaton County really existed. So Sheriff's Department had a page, Dispatch had a page, Parks had a page, but it was all disjointed. So I will say he's been here less than 2 years, and he's helped build a social media framework across multiple platforms, plus monthly newsletters, both internal and external. And the education material that we had for the tax allocation, that was the bulk of that was being derived from contributions Logan made to that effort. So I just want to say, sometimes people don't fully understand what comms does, right? We had a logo rebrand, we had a launch of social media, we had building a foundation for communication structure in less than 14 months. That's unheard of, and he did a fantastic job. Shout out to Ed Services, they helped, they were a big help, but really we would not be where we're at today if it wasn't for Mr. Bailey, so.
And we should have had that years ago. I think we've all agree that we are way behind the curve. Locals didn't know us, the public didn't know us, they still don't know us, and they still say that they don't know. The other thing I want to mention too, with the work done in the controller's office, we value Logan, we value everybody, but we value Logan greatly because he's done work on contracts, and writing them. He's done work on researching for grants because we don't have that availability. He did work with our whole office. It was Claudine and Ben, Logan, the three of them mostly, and I smiled a lot through it, dealing with the funding for Bank Intercounty Drain. We'll give Logan kudos to that major. That's $5 million that we got and an attempt at 6 additional that we didn't receive, but that wasn't due to his work, that was just due to the way it went. What?
I'm supposed to bring that up.
Yeah, you do, because it was an awful lot of work for the office to do, but, so while he is communications, he's also had to serve in multiple areas. I can't even name them all.
Yeah.
We'll have him put a list together. Just kidding.
Well, thanks, everybody. That was very nice. But I will say, for any new commissioners, the biggest problem we have at the county is building trust, now with the public and then other external agencies too, is just because we haven't really talked to them. We're very disjointed in how we've talked to them. So often when we'd go talk to the governor's office or Peter's office for funding for Banker County, every time they're like, where's Eaton County been? You know, what are we doing? And so that's part of, I think, my department's role has to be, we have to build trust with anybody that can offer resources to the county or residents, as well as with residents in the other municipalities too. We went around during this last tax limitation campaign to all the townships, cities and villages, and pretty much every time they're like, who are you and where have you been? We, you know, Controller Sobey convened a meeting of all of the townships, cities and villages, and they said, why haven't we done this before? Can we keep doing it? And that's another thing we actually need to schedule out. But I would just say, you know, there's a lot of work that has to be done. We have a public safety millage out there now. We have to continue to try and build that trust, and it's more than just posting on social media or sending a mailer, which we cannot afford to do actually right now, so we're trying to figure that out too. But we have to be present in any and everything that we do at the county, and tell them what we do, and then also how can we help them, whether that's the public or that's other municipalities.
Before you comment, Tim, I attended a meeting last night, and Commissioner Holmes and Commissioner Christensen was also there. And we were talking about the ballot proposal. And because the website has been updated and so much easier to do, Commissioner Christensen was able to pull up the calculator as we were talking about it and directed everybody how to get there, how quickly and easy it is to use. So yeah, it's a completely different website for us, and I am thankful for it. So, Commissioner Barnes.
No, thanks, Brian. You said exactly what I was going to say, is that Public Safety Millage Calculator is on that website, so that makes it a lot easier when you go to meetings and township meetings, things like that. So good job for bringing that up. The more people know, the better off.
Absolutely. All right, now, back to the bills.
So for commissioners that are new again, this body, whoops, I didn't get to it, and this committee and the full board have to approve these. So we have a summary of the payments that are made, going by general fund and then funds. And these are all payments that are made that you have to approve. So you'll see that the total, what we call board bills or claims, is $842,000. Those are ones that can't go out immediately. Then there are payments that we must make immediately, and that is due to whether it's let's say a consumer's bill or phone bill, if it's transfers for tax payments to locals or to the state, any state payments that are made, things that we have to remit and cannot wait for a month to do that. So you will see that the total there, which will always be larger, in this case it's 2.9 million. And a lot of those, I'm going to show you here, in the, you'll see here drain, 2.1 million. So that's what makes up the most of that. That's the payments related to construction that was done. Most of that on projects that were debt, but this is the actual payments from that. That goes on to the electronic payments. Those are our payroll. It's any transfers to the agencies that we are responsible, the treasurer is responsible for collecting all revenue. That would be the Barry Eaton Health Department, the Medical Care Facility, and the Road Commission. So all of the monies that come in revenue-wise are then paid out through an electronic funds transfer. So you'll see Road Commission, 1.2 million, 1 million for Barry Eaton Health, and Medical Care Facility is 2.5 million. So that's what you're approving, is the payment, and you're approving the fact that we had to pay those immediate payments, which have already been done. The other checks will not go out until next Wednesday after the board meeting. And they are listed, give you this, they're listed in detail, so you see the vendors that we paid, the amount that we paid. If you have ever any questions, we can pull an invoice for you. This is something new that, again, our finance director started when she took over, and giving detail, because you need to know who you're paying and you need to know what you're paying for. So it's a lengthy report. What will go to the board will not be this, but board members can look at this. So you can see. I'll keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. But it's good information for you to have. You need to know who you're paying. You need to ask us questions. That's our responsibility, is to answer those questions as to what we're paying, and departments should answer the same questions as well.
Okay.
And
Commissioner,
I appreciate the way that it's being presented now, because I have asked Melissa a couple of times on things. So, much better.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, Connie and staff, why is it broken out the way that it is between like short-term, long-term?
As far as immediate payments on board,
At the beginning of the report, the way that you break it down.
so we need to let you know the ones, the 842,000, I think it was, are payments that you're approving that will go out next week. So after the board approves it. So those are payments that we can't make without the board's approval. So the checks sit there. The other ones are payments that we have to make, whether it's for timing, transfers of money from the treasurer that he's holding for the other entities. So those are payments we've already made. But that's why it has to be separated out through the audit. That's what they look for. They go through and they do a report that we provide, and they review it to make sure that the payments that are on here, that were immediate, that you reviewed them. Even though they've been paid, you have to review them. So you still have the opportunity to question us and ask what's been paid and why are you doing it? And let's look at not doing that again, right? So if you wanted to stop paying a certain vendor, you wanted us to look at something, this is your opportunity to do that. But that's why it has to be separated. EFTs are separated and payroll are separated out for that same reason.
Mostly for approval and.
It is for approval, but it's so that you understand the ones that have already been paid and the ones that you're approving for payment after the board meeting.
Could we ever like say, I don't want you to pay that bill, and you don't pay it?
You can say that to us. Now, I will say that what that ends up doing is likely, if we've had a purchase order that was done, we've committed to pay it, it's generally in the budget. Now, if there was something in here that was not in the budget and it was being paid, that you had not done a budget amendment for, so let's say, I'll use an example like some repair of something, vehicles, repair. If you're questioning why something is so expensive, or some other contract that we're having, that's when you would want to come to us and say that we want to understand what you're doing. But the payments are on hold until they're approved. So if there's a question that you had, we would hold that payment until it was resolved. We would have to.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
any other questions concerning the bills? All right, I think that's the most time we spent on the bills in quite some time, but.
We just need approval to move them to the board.
To pay the bills.
Yeah.
So, we have a motion?
I'll move it, yeah.
Okay. So, moved and supported. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, we paid the bills. And down to item 14, limited public comment. All right, seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.